Today I will be talking about some of the worst enemies in Warframe, based on a poll I did on my community page. Starting with number 5, we have the Ancient Healer from the Infested and Corrupted factions. Ancient Healers project an aura to its nearby allies to give them overguard, which prevents crowd control of any kind. While enemies can only get overguard once and it will be removed if the healer is killed, this can still ruin a lot of Warframe abilities' effectiveness and cause Infested to attack more aggressively due to being immune to stuns. The next worst enemy type in Warframe are defensive Eximus, including Corpus Guardian Eximus or Arctic Eximus, which reduce your damage or deny attacks entirely. Guardian Eximus project an aura to nearby enemies that makes them 90% resistant to all damage, but thankfully this damage reduction does not affect overguard. The Eximus itself is protected by swirling, invincible energy shields that block projectiles, making them even more annoying to deal with. Arctic Eximus produce an object health snow globe like frost that entirely is immune to area of effect damage, requiring normal weapons to deal with them quickly. In addition, enemies will attempt to stay close to an Arctic Eximus, so all enemies inside are fully protected from damage for a short time. Following defensive Eximus, we have offensive Eximus such as Arson or Volatile Eximus, who directly attack the player with high damage or knockdown effects. The Volatile Eximus does extreme damage and can easily one-shot even highly armored players in Steel Path, and can cripple weak objectives like excavators if they are within its attack line. The Arson Eximus fires out waves of fire at regular intervals with a guaranteed heat proc and knocking the player over if they don't have knockdown immunity. And some players might not even know this, but heat procs on the player also reduce your armor by 50% while you are on fire, just like when enemies are on fire, so you take extra health damage, and in Rhino or Frost's case their powers that scale off armor will become weaker. Getting back to the Infested faction, we have the second worst enemy in Warframe, the Ancient Disruptor. A horrifyingly unfair ability denial unit, the Disruptor has two functions. 1. They project a purple haze effect to itself and nearby units that makes them heavily resistant to Warframe ability damage, and heavily reduces Warframe ability duration. 2nd, attacks by the Disruptor or nearby units with its aura will drain the player's energy based on a percentage of damage they deal, meaning this scales infinitely to the point where even in base level Steel Path, one hit from a Disruptor can steal an entire energy pool. Even worse, this energy pool steals energy even if the attack did 0 damage, such as with Valkyr in Hysteria, and is only truly blocked by the player having Overguard, or Nazos warding Halo. Much more frustratingly is how inconsistent the ability nerf aura is. For example, some abilities will only have their duration reduced if they were cast on an Infested who already had the aura during the cast. Other times the Disruptor entering the area will prematurely end or reduce the duration of abilities. For example, Vauban's Bastille will keep enemies held up for the full duration even if a Disruptor enters the area, but enemies already buffed will drop out prematurely and will never be picked up again even if the aura ends. With Vortex, Disruptor's got a sneaky stealth buff where even though it's an active ability with no duration put on enemies, they will still stand up after a few seconds and be free to run around. In another example, Mind Control will never have its duration reduced when cast on normal enemies, but her Chaos ability will always have its duration reduced to all enemies in the entire radius of Chaos if a Disruptor is anywhere inside, even if enemies are out of range from the Disruptor's aura. One positive note is radiation procs do disable the aura to nearby units as it becomes hostile to them, so that might be something worth considering. And what is the most hated enemy type in Warframe? The dreaded Corpus Nullifier, of course. This annoying unit has been a constant annoyance for players for a very long time, projecting glowing energy shields that not only block all attacks to the Nullifier and any enemy inside the bubble, but also disable most Warframe abilities when inside. Hilariously, their bubbles can even drain Infested stacks from Nidus when inside, even though his stacks are Infested mutation and not an ability. This is a change I mocked when it was added as there was literally no reason for it, and I am sure you agree it's silly. Their bubbles are also DPS checks, as single-shot weapons will only partially deplete them, making them very ineffective, and making automatic or beam weapons ideal at dispatching their bubbles. While most nullifiers in Warframe use snipers or automatic pistols and stay away from the player, the Vapos nullifiers on Jupiter and the nullifiers in Railjack use melee weapons and will actively charge the player, forcing you to deal with them quickly or have your powers prematurely ended. Aside from shooting them, you can also use the Neutralizing Justice Augment mod for the Miter, which disables the bubble in a single hit in most cases, but it requires you replace something else to fit it on and does nothing else positively for you, essentially using a precious slot to deal with a single enemy. But since this enemy is number 1 on this list, perhaps that is worth it to you. And there you have it, the worst enemies in Warframe. Do you agree with this list, or do you think one of these enemies are way more of a nuisance for you? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.